Hello, it's Dr. Jack Wolfson, board-certified cardiologist with another episode of the Healthy Heart Show. And today I've got a special guest, and get ready for this. He's only 19 years old, but the wisdom of this man at 19 years old, I only wish someone told me all the things that Matt Maruca already knows when I was 19. When I was 19, I was a sophomore in college. I knew I was pre-med, but I was totally in that sickness model. Too much bad food, not enough sunshine, not enough sleep, too much EMF, blue light exposure, libraries, fluorescent lights, alcohol, you name it, I was doing it. So 19-year-old Matt Maruca, got him on the podcast. He's the founder and CEO of Raw Optics, and he'll tell you, Matt, show us their hat there. There's the hat, perfect. All right, so Matt, tell us, tell me some of your story. Your story, I would assume, is not that long because you're only 19. But how did you get to become founder of your eyewear company?
Yeah, so I'll start with myself. Pretty much when I was growing up, I had some health issues, and namely headaches, gut issues, and allergies. And then I was just getting worse and worse as I went towards high school. And, you know, high school is a time when you're trying to be social and have fun and play sports. And I wasn't really doing any of these things because I didn't feel well. So I ended up trying different little things throughout my journey. Like, for example, growing up, I went to a naturopath. I already, of course, went to all the Western medical doctors that I could go to with my mom and my dad. I went, and then I tried a gluten-free, dairy-free diet per the recommendations of one of my dad's girlfriends, because my parents were split since I was really young. And that kind of made sense and made me feel better, but none of these things felt like they were going really deep. And so eventually, when the issues got to their absolute worst, when I was about 14 years old in my first year of high school, I began to research how to heal a damaged gut, because I thought all this acne I was starting to get, so it wasn't the main issues I was having that triggered my change and my search. It was vanity, acne, skin issues, and so on. And my mom had said that, greasy foods could somehow clog the pores. So I just assumed that all these greasy foods I was eating were somehow clogging my pores via gut. I don't even think that's possible because, I don't think whole oil molecules get into our skin, into our bloodstream. Maybe they do if our gut's damaged enough. I'm not sure about that at this point, but that's irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that when I learned about the paleo diet, which is the first thing that one finds after researching for how to heal a damaged gut, I realized that what I was doing and the way I was eating was really bad, and that the way everyone was eating was really bad. It's like basically this suffering I was having opened my mind up to, like, if I had read Mark Sisson, Rob Wolf, Chris Kress, or anything 2 weeks previous to this light bulb moment, I would have just thought it was stupid. But then when I was struggling so much and I needed a change of paradigm to feel better, then I read these things and I was like, damn, this makes so much sense. Everyone's killing themselves. So it led me into a whole series of trying to solve my issues with diet for a long time. And diet alone, long story short, it didn't work. I felt significantly better upon removing all these junk foods from my diet, but then I started to feel worse and worse and worse, even though I was making my diet more and more strict, trying to eliminate foods that could stimulate my immune system and trigger, my allergies and all this stuff, like as per the autoimmune protocol of the paleo diet. Then I went even further because I wasn't feeling well, to try to heal my gut with the gut and psychology syndrome, GAPS diet, all about bone broth and all this stuff. So I was really going through all the phases of paleo, getting stricter and stricter, but feeling worse and worse and not understanding why. I thought I had to find that one food that was harming me. I had to balance my carbohydrate, protein, fat ratios, which is just not clearly the issue. But anyhow, I learned about Dr. Cruz, who you had mentioned, we just spoke about briefly, and the importance of, from him, these different researchers talking about the importance of light and electricity and mitochondria for our health, these factors that are not typically considered. In other words, I learned about the importance of the engine in our cell the engines, I should say, and how it was the engines in our cells are more important for our health than the gas that's going in, the food we're eating. I'd never heard that concept before. So I began to do all the things that improve my engine. Interestingly enough, learning that I could even eat not so good food while doing these things that improve my engine and actually still feel way better than I ever did before. Not that that's optimal, and I don't do that generally speaking, but I got way better. And then as far as the glasses company, I just needed some way to make money so that I wouldn't have to go to college and be like dependent on my father, and be stuck in a bad blue light, Wi-Fi environment. And I wanted to be able to travel and do different kinds of things. And I was thinking about that for my whole senior year of high school, which was the year after I had applied all these ideas, which I did on a foreign exchange program in Eastern Europe during my junior year. And eventually, through various ideas that I thought about, some of which are still in the works, but not at this exact moment. The one that just kind of came along and worked was the blue blockers. And basically Luke Story, who we also just spoke about, was in New York City for an event in the summer after my senior year of high school. And I had heard him Jack on his podcast, and he was saying, I'm coming to New York. Anyone on the East Coast, come and tap beauty and blah, blah, blah. And so I went to this beauty salon thing where he was giving a little talk in New York, 2-hour drive from Philly, where I'm from, and met Luke, asked if I could be on his podcast to tell this story. And that podcast totally took off. But it was 7 months later that we released it. And that's why I'm in Los Angeles, actually, because a really influential music producer out here invited me out to stay out here and work with him. So that's pretty cool. But that same night that I asked if I could be on his podcast, he asked me. So it's like I got a benefit from – we both benefited on both sides. But I got to be on his podcast and end up in Los Angeles working with some celebrity type people, basically. But that was many months later. He got a pair of blue blocking glasses that looks fantastic. And I got a company out of it because I made a pair of glasses for him. He couldn't figure out how to do it. And so I figured out how to do the tinting of the lenses with the right tint. And eventually I realized this was such a pain for me to get done with the specific tints. No one else was doing it. So I started doing it. Now you have several, let's say, copycat companies, although it's capitalism. So, like Blue Blocks in Australia, great company nonetheless. But, they followed. Rhythm Optics in Australia, more recent, they're following with the BPI tints. Again, nothing wrong with that, though. It's capitalism, so I encourage the competition. And they're both companies providing good quality products, as far as I understand. And but that's how I started the company. We were starting by accepting other people's frames and tinting the lenses so they could have their own frame. We transitioned into offering our own styles. And now we're in a big transition, let's say, that's kind of been going on for a while, but towards a more a new website, a new production setup. We have some new lenses coming down the pike, hoping for all this to be ready by January 1st, but not 100% sure. That's kind of how I got to where I am right now. It's pretty cool, just trying to build up the business so I have financial security. And more importantly, I'm focused on putting these ideas down into a book or some similar form to encapsulate them, because pretty much every day, everywhere I go, I'm telling the same stories to people who ask, how'd you get into the glasses company? What do you do for work? How did you get into that? And it'd be really good to just have something to share. So that's the gist.
Sounds pretty good. It's interesting you talked about not going to college, and I don't know if you're going to go to college or not, but I can't even imagine any scenario of how college would provide any value to an entrepreneur like yourself, someone who already kind of gets it as far as first of all what he wants to do, the things that he's into, and the fact that what are you going to learn in college? I mean, how to you learn about how they teach biology, how mainstream biology is thought of, or chemistry is thought of, or economics. Yeah. I mean, you're practicing it and you're living it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I could teach you what people will learn in college. I just looked up I pulled up an essay that I read. I'm a big, I got very interested recently in what schooling, the real purpose of schooling and what it's really doing to people. And this is just my belief, but I do believe it's the truth. there's a guy named Dr. John Taylor Gatto, who is a New York City public school teacher who was like won awards for being such a good teacher. But eventually the administration caught on to the fact that his students were out from class during the day, and they were, because he had let them pursue what was of interest to them. And the administration was saying, but your kids can't just be out all the time. They have to be in school, going through the motions and blah, blah, blah. And quickly he said he realized that schooling wasn't about kids learning. It was actually about them learning to be controlled and to be obedient, I should say. And it's interesting. Like there's some people in Malibu who I just met briefly. There's a guy named Laird Hamilton. He's a big surfer, and his wife, Gabby Reese, she's a volleyball player for the U.S. team. At least she used to be. And they actually homeschooled their kids, and they were talking about it and, how their kids are much more mature. And I mean, these are two like pretty high levels, let's say influential type people and in their various fields. And, they were talking basically and saying like, when you realize that the curriculum of homeschooling only takes about 2 hours per day to cover the material that's necessary, it makes you start to wonder what that other 4 or 5 hours per day is really for. And so in short, Dr. Gatto, he summarized it. He has a book called The Underground History of American Education. These are some helicopters from the U.S. Navy base, Camp Pendleton up the way, which is no bueno for EMS exposure down here in San Diego. But anyway, so basically the first lesson is stay in the class where you belong, basically be where you need to be. Start thinking when you're told and stop thinking when you're told not to, basically. Surrender your will to predestined chain of command. You only get to study what the teacher wants you to study and what they think is important for you. Most important lesson is 5, that your self-respect should depend on an observer's measure of your worth. And that is, I think, 5. Lesson 6 is that you're being watched. So you're under surveillance. And that's, and so you need to be careful what you're doing because someone's always on top of you. And that's like, in his book, he describes how the people who innovated schooling kind of innovated it as a way to create an obedient mass of individuals to work for the industrial system. And I can't say there's anything wrong with it, but it would be good for the people who want to wake up to realize that that's what it is. School isn't about it is like, you don't send your kids off to school every day to get smarter and get education. They're going there to be taught to be obedient. So I would say, you might have, you have kids, you mentioned they might be going to school. Like they're just, if you read this book, you'd probably take them out of school and figure out how to homeschool them. I got to be honest with you.
Well, no, it's, obviously I grew up in the public school system and, and I totally understand the things you're saying, sitting in the classroom all day long under artificial light, learning about history of often dirty people and dirty politicians and war and religion and science as it's perceived by some people and science as it is without any creative flair, any creator to it. Science for just basic evolutionary science as opposed to this is a miracle of how we are being. But children need to be children, and yet from day one, it's almost like they're put into that matrix. They're put into that educational system where they're not children. They're just meant to be like little obedient beings. So I do understand what you're saying. Our children go to a school called the Waldorf School because homeschool, I think is fantastic on a variety of levels, but it's just society in so many ways is kind of geared against you from being able to do that. And I think that from a social aspect, children do all belong to be together. And sometimes if you homeschool, it's a little bit isolated. And then therefore you need to find other homeschoolers to get them all together. And sometimes that's a little more difficult. But I mean, I've got no problem with people wanting to homeschool their child. I'm in total agreement. But I think the Waldorf method, for example, my kids have an hour and a half recess, and we're in Colorado. So come rain, sun, snow, sleet, they are outside and they're playing, and that's really, really fantastic. So
that's pretty cool. Yeah, I've heard about Waldorf schools, and that seems like the second best option, or maybe the best option for some people in some cases. So yeah, but as it goes back to your question about college, it just became apparent to me, I was going to go to college. I applied to some schools that seemed good. I was going to go, but I realized that the only reason I would go to college was so that I could remain financially dependent on my father. So because thankfully I'm lucky in a way that my family saved money so that I could go to college, and they would be paying for that and it would be covered. So I would have, basically 4 years of free time to think and learn and meet people and live and do what I want to do within the confines of being trapped in a school, more or less, and then develop any ideas that I had on the side. And I found some pretty cool little liberal arts schools like in Florida that are with strong sun and all this stuff. But the biggest thing, one, was like, I'm going to have to be stuck in a dorm with the Wi-Fi and other peers with the bad circadian like systems and everything. Maybe I could get an exemption, which would be more interesting. But then I just basically what happened was I went on a gap year trip to Europe, or not a gap year, but yeah, like a gap year. I was going to go to college, but after a full year, actually only after a semester. That was my plan. So I was going to take a half semester or 1 semester and travel the world half a year. Starting it was around October of just after my senior year of high school, which was not the recent October, but the one before that, I believe. Wait, let me think about that actually. Yeah, exactly. And I traveled around, and one of my first stops, I was visiting a guy in Norway who I met through the Cruise Quantum Health, Optimal Health community. And basically is into Qigong. He's a really good friend of mine now, and this energy practice with the Qigong master of his who lives in Norway, and he trains and teaches these things to his friends in Norway who are some really top level professional soccer players in Norway's top league, who are like young guys who are looking to be, one of them's going to Austria to play in their top league now, which is a pretty big deal. He's going to be making a ton of cash at a really young age, like $1 million a year or something like that. This kind of thing. And I met his Qigong master, this guy Pierre, and sat down and talked with him. And I'm glad I did. It was like a chance that he was coming home early because I wasn't supposed to meet him. And I was telling him all this story, of mitochondria and all the stuff I learned in my background. And they were just listening so intently at dinner. And I felt really glad that these people were so open-minded. They had never met me before. And they were like, for 20 minutes, I just told them what I had learned, and so they could, take it and make sense of it. And he said, I told him I was thinking about going to college. He's like, why would you do that? And I really started thinking about it. Like, why would I do that? Like, I could travel. I mean, if nothing else, I could travel through this guy's whole network and teach this to all of his friends. He said, I have all these people around the US, Canada, the world who are into Qigong, and this is what they've been looking for, this understanding of how Western science meets these Eastern principles. So from there, it was like no brainer. Like I'm traveling around, doing cool things, pursuing cool opportunities. Yep. So to answer your question, the only reason it would make sense for someone to go to college is to have financial dependence. Like if you can't make your own money through an online business where you're mobile, then you're going to be stuck in one spot, which might feel like a regression compared to going to college. But I would actually say that I think for someone to finish college or high school and go straight into, or even drop out, even better, and get straight into working, so they start making their own money and realize that in the world, either you go out and you catch your own food and get your own water and build your own shelter in the middle of nowhere, which isn't even really legal today anymore. You're like required to own property, otherwise you're homeless, and you can't really live on federal land, I don't think, if I'm not mistaken. You might know better about that than I do. So you really can't do what our ancestors did, which is collect your own living off nature. So I thought about this a lot. I was like, well, if I can't just do what our ancestors did, which is literally get my living from nature, I have to get food and water and shelter somehow. And that means I have to do it through the economic system, which means I need to figure out how to get someone else or people to put their money in my pocket, which means I need to provide some good or service. And then it was a really logical thing. And point is, though, I was landscaping. It wasn't like I just had this business like that. Right. I mean, I kind of did, but I was landscaping for several months after high school, just like over the summer in the sun with my shirt off. It was a really great workout. And I was thinking, like, this is fun and I like it, but I'm way smarter than this. Like, I know all this quantum health information that I've been studying for the last 3 or 4 years. Like, there must be a way that I can apply this knowledge that I have to have, to help people. And so as a result of doing manual labor every day for so many months and thinking this is awesome, but I'm smarter than this and I can figure something else better, eventually it just kind of came like it was a no-brainer over time. Like, when the opportunity came, I was ready for it. I was like, I'm done with that. I'm going to start tinting people's glasses. So that's what I would say. People go get a job and start working out in the sun. And eventually if you're reading and doing all this other stuff over time and you're not someone who settles, you'll be quickly on to the next thing. I say landscaping is the way to go.
Yeah, I definitely would say, as far as myself personally, I went through high school and then right into undergrad and then right into medical school. And I was definitely not prepared for that. I don't have any necessarily regrets because I'm happy with my condition is where I'm at today. But as far as just kind of going down that road without experiencing the real world, I definitely could have used a couple years of maturity and maybe traveling and maybe working in some, some real world job to kind of get me out of that educational system. And I think unless you want to become a neurosurgeon like our friend Jack Cruz, or an attorney or a cardiologist, where you want to do these procedures, the rest of it, getting into college and that whole model is just a waste of time, a waste of money. It's not healthy. I mean, what do you say, when you say, listen, you're 19 years old, you see some of your other 19-year-old high school friends that are staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning. They're in the artificial lights. They're in the artificial matrix lifestyle. What do you tell those people to kind of get them out of it?
I don't even try. I honestly, I don't even try. I don't bother. I tried, actually. It's funny, part of my journey, which I'll be writing about all this in my book or whatever form of content this idea takes. I'll call it a book from now on. So in the book, I'll be writing these stories. But one thing I did in my senior year of high school, when I returned from my foreign exchange program in Eastern Europe, which, like I said, was where I transformed, then I came back. Like in that book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, that Dr. Cruz recommends to people, this guy went off to the, India, and he was an asshole lawyer before he left, but he came back and he was all changed and tan and healthy. And that was honestly like the change I went through, although I don't think I was a big asshole before, but I was to myself. Like, I was basically such a people pleaser that I never developed like really any individuality about myself. And, I'm still just growing on that front. But I started a club in high school that year called the Optimal Club. So just trying to teach people about optimal health, basically. And my friends were like the other officers of the club. So like my 3 best friends who kind of started to understand these ideas I was telling people about, because they saw how well I was doing. So they all just kind of were like sold on it. They might not wear their blue blocking glasses every night. One of them does. The other 2, wear them most of the time. And it doesn't really matter though. Like, again, I used to care. It used to be like important to me, but now it isn't. Like, point is that I spent my half of my senior year, the first half, trying to convince people that they needed to live their lifestyle different. And this came from a place of like lacking on my own part. Like, basically I wasn't feeling as good as I could have been. I wasn't applying these protocols to the extent that I could have been to really be optimal. I was more concerned, again, I can't say for sure why, but I was so concerned with helping others and trying to save everyone else. And I think this actually goes back to, now I'm just totally spitballing here, but I think this goes back to these like really far left communist ideas that were implanted in the United States either after World War II was over, when a lot of academics from Nazi Germany came to the United States and actually filled the higher levels of academia. And these ideas of like that, basically, I mean, if you're a very liberal, far left kind of guy, like, no offense, but the ideas that basically underline today's liberal philosophies of, the, like, courses in college, like gender studies, these studies courses are all underlined by this premise of the victim, of the oppressor and the oppressed ideology of viewing the world, pardon me. And that's something that I don't know how to simplify that idea, but it's the oppressed mindset. Basically, in short, it's socialism or Marxism. And that's something that's really pervasive today, especially, for me, having grown up in Philadelphia, a very blue liberal area. And for anyone who wants more details on this, there's a very famous psychologist named Jordan Peterson. Are you familiar with him by chance? Yeah. So people can look into his work in a book, 12 Rules for Life, he wrote, that outlines these ideas. But point is that I think I was falling prey to these ideas, that it was more important to try to help everyone and try to save everyone. And, oh my God, blah, blah, like, you get what I'm saying? These ideas, these very idealistic ideas. And what I realized the other day talking with a friend is that for the powers that be, this was actually last night I was talking with this friend, the powers that be, that are concerned with only themselves and blah, 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 that people are always talking about, that everyone, they don't care, and they, blah, 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 that everyone's always referring to. I realized that probably the best thing that they could have in order for things to remain would be a mass of individuals whose only concern is about helping others. Because then the result effect of that, I think, at least from my experience, is that no one will ever help themselves. And therefore, those people who are in control will always be able to remain in control. Whereas, on the other hand, I realized, and I'll tell you where this change came. It came when I met Dr. Jack Cruz for the first time in Mexico on a members event. Told me, you need to be selfish. And I started to think about that, and it didn't really register until much more recently. It's been 2 full years since that, going into this December. And just in a couple weeks, I'll be back there for the 3rd time. So 2 years later after meeting him. And boy, when I started focusing on myself, learning about the importance of that, things changed, right? And just to drive that one home, I realized that if someone really is concerned about changing the world and making the world a better place and helping others, first of all, if you have a ton of money, so if you're like, let's say, selfish and you work really hard and you make a ton of money for yourself, not volunteering and doing all this other stuff for others, but for yourself, you're going to have a much bigger chance at changing the world, I think, if you have $100 million in the bank. You know what I mean? You're a rich guy. Let's be honest. I think people who have a ton of money are much more likely to be able to change the world. So that's
that's possible, but obviously, the revolutions what you're talking about, the people that changed the world, whether it was Adolf Hitler or Stalin or Matt Maruca's. How much money does Matt Maruca have to change the world? And that's the beauty of the internet, or the whole concept of the world is flat. It's like, hey, listen, anybody with a podcast or with a book or with a pen can make tremendous inroads. But I think also, is like you said, is that you have to live it to lead it. You have to really practice the art of living healthy before you can teach other people. And there's so many other gurus out there, including in the medical community, where they talk about health, they talk about ways to stay healthy, but they're not living it. They're taking pharmaceuticals, they're eating unhealthy foods. And I see this in the conferences I go to, where someone's talking about the benefits of organic eating, and then they'll sit down and they'll be shoving in some French fries with high fructose Heinz ketchup. But if you're listening to the podcast and you're not watching the video recording, we're talking with Matt Maruca here, the founder of Raw Optics, and he's sitting outside. He's in the sun. He's shirtless right now in this interview, and he's soaking up the sun. Tell me about the mitochondria and where you started to allude to in the beginning, where you and Jack and others say it's not a food story, it's a sunshine and sleep circadian rhythm story. Tell me about this hack of the mitochondria and how we make healthy mitochondria, because it's the engine, not the fuel, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just touch on what you just said previously about fixing ourselves. That's really where I was going. There's tangents in there that some may find interesting for pursuit, but the key thing was what you said. When one focuses on themselves, when I speak for myself, when I started to focus on myself and the benefits of improving my health rather than focusing on all these other people, I realized, and as you can see, I've got a company now. I look pretty healthy. and I can radiate that energy and people feel that and they see it. That was the best thing I could do for others, was actually becoming that example. So you hit it right, nail on the head, with like Gandhi saying the same thing, be the change you wish to see in the world, and so on. So I recommend to people, and this goes back to the thing, what do I tell my peers? I tell them nothing. I show them everything by doing what I do. So now I've got a lot of peers who are like Instagram messaging me, Facebook message. Well, no one uses Facebook in my generation now. They use Instagram and Snapchat. But they Instagram message me saying like, man, this is so cool. I'd love to connect with you. Like, and I'm open to that, you know, like I will, if someone reaches out and they have the balls to come out and like be vulnerable, like I will totally sit down with them and have a coffee or whatever, or I don't drink coffee, but you know, something like that. So that's for anyone listening to that. Don't try. It is dumb to try to convince your wife, your kids, or any one of these things. You have to live it first, because when you try to convince someone, you're trying to convince their neocortex, their logical brain. But until you convince their limbic system, which is the emotional foundational brain that Simon Sinek, the psychologist, talks about, people aren't going to believe you. So you need to start with why. And as far as matters of health and things, most likely explanations of words aren't going to convince people. You need to do it and live it, and they'll see it and they'll feel it, and then they'll believe you from an emotional limbic system level. So that's that. Now, how does it get into
Fantastic.
this?
Let me stop you there too, and you know, just because you know, whenever you talk about the concept of being selfish or selfishness, it always reminds me of the books by Ayn Rand and the Redhead and Atlas Shrugged and everything from Ayn Rand. It really goes back to that virtue of selfishness, and that is how society gets better. When the selfish person is allowed to be selfish and create greatness, that's how everybody in society can be lifted up, when you give people that free reign to do so. So I certainly appreciate that.
That is fantastic. I'm actually writing down her name real quick, Ayn Rand, because I've been meaning to read her books for the longest time, and I haven't. Just, you know, I'm doing a lot of stuff. But that is really, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's going to be really.
You will gobble up her things.
I'm
sure. I mean, once again, obviously her two big ones are the Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. And then she has a lot more stuff that she does, which is basically nonfiction after that. But those are kind of, you know, fictionalized stories. And yeah, absolutely fantastic, classic.
The Fountainhead. Awesome. I'm very excited.
And Atlas Shrugged is probably her premier one.
That's the one I'm going to read first. Yeah, I've heard that.
And it looks a little bit daunting, but man, you'll go through that in a couple nights and you'll be done with it. So tell me what's the matter with coffee? Why don't you drink coffee?
Actually, it just makes me feel really weird. I got to be honest. I don't know. There's a few things that, like, I'm not claiming to be perfect, to have all the answers. Not that was even a premise, but just for someone who might think, this guy's got it figured it out. Like, no, I don't have everything figured out. Coffee causes me to get like kind of headaches. I wouldn't say headaches, but to be anxious, really on edge, and nasal congestion. And so does chocolate, dark. The more cacao, the worse, believe it or not. So people think, oh, maybe it's the milk, but actually the more sugary and light the chocolate is, the less of a problem it presents on that front. So it's something about the caffeine, the beans. I have a hunch that when I was on the autoimmune protocol of the paleo diet, trying to eliminate coffee and chocolate, I somehow almost gave myself an allergy to them based on like my mental, physical, like I would eat them and I would be so upset with myself and create a whole stress response about it. I think that might be part of the issue, but yeah, but I don't think coffee's horrible. Although Dr. Cruz, you can read some of his recent posts about that it's not going to be an optimal thing for people to be doing in a 5G world. The biggest thing is that coffee is a crutch. So it's like a credit card. So like if you need coffee to like wake you up in the morning, it means you're lacking, the DC electric charge in the mitochondria to run optimally. So yeah, Dr. Cruz, when I asked him about the coffee thing, he said it's like what happens when you put too much electricity into a circuit, it'll short or something, or it's whatever. I don't exactly know, but so that's what he claimed. He said coffee is for me because I'm doing good on energy. So anyhow, that's coffee.
Coffee's kind of an interesting one in the sense that, I grew up, my father was a coffee drinker. I became a coffee drinker, cold weather in Chicago. And then when I met my wife, she was pretty down on coffee and saying it is a crutch and it is a stimulant and it is an addiction, and those things are all true. But yet if you read into the medical literature about the coffee drinkers, the people that drink coffee tend to be some of the healthiest people, and it is a tremendous antioxidant. And that's when people are drinking junk coffee. So one of the people I interviewed for my podcast is the CEO of Purity Coffee. And Purity Coffee, the idea there was we're going to go find out the beans with the highest antioxidant levels in the world. So he goes, he finds those coffee beans. It just so happens he was able to find organic and low mold. So I do agree that if you do have issues with stress, anxiety, sleeplessness, or from a cardiac standpoint, palpitations, racing heart feelings, that you should look at coffee and caffeine. And like you said, chocolate contains theobromine, which is basically a molecular mimic of caffeine. There's such similarities there that it's probably something you want to reduce.
Yeah. I don't know about how coffee could have those benefits. Maybe it's the antioxidants. I've been swayed in a different direction that more antioxidants isn't necessarily better, because reactive oxygen species are what our mitochondria use for signaling purposes. So when we try to get rid of these, we could actually have problems. So
but this is a food, but this is a food-based antioxidant. It's not like somebody would be saying, "Hey, take extra, external vitamin C or some kind of standalone product." It is a food-based item. So tell me, why are you shirtless in the sun? What does that mean?
Yeah, let's get to that. So when I learned about how to improve my engine, I learned that the engines, the mitochondria, the little motors in our cells, they are controlled by light and electromagnetic radiation. So in other words, just as an engine in a car isn't controlled and dictated by the gas that's in the car, so too are the engines in our mitochondria not dictated by the food that's going into our body. So essentially, I started going in the sun and avoiding artificial light at night, because this is the natural electromagnetic rhythm we're designed to be in and we're designed to function in. We have a lot of hormones, for example, that are designed to be produced upon the exposure of solar light in the morning. And likewise, we have a lot of hormones that are designed to be produced in the evening upon the exposure of darkness. So we're a diurnal animal. We're not nocturnal. So some people, if you're a human, you say you're nocturnal, what you're really saying is you're a fucked up diurnal animal. That's it. Not nocturnal. Yeah. Your brain and body will devolve, because an animal that lives during the day has access to the energy of the solar spectrum. We fit a niche that gets that benefit. If humans lived at night, we wouldn't have had that benefit of that much solar energy. So we never would have become as complex as we are, because complexity requires energy in life. And so if someone goes and lives all the time during darkness and not during the sunlight, in sun, then their level of complexity is going to go from here, where their genes, allow them to be, that, based on the most optimal environment we've been in before. And this can always improve too, because our genes are like a shuffling code that can always be improved. But basically, if we go to a worse environment with less energy, like no sun and mostly artificial light, then we're going to be devolving to match the complexity that is allowed by that energy present. So whether you're nocturnal or you just live in indoor lifestyle all the time, that's the problem you're going to face. So when I started getting in sun, I got way better. Like, it was 3 months that I started getting in sun in that springtime that I was on the foreign exchange in Eastern Europe. And I got so much better on every level of my life. I felt so amazing that it was like, maybe we're just designed to be connected to the sun. And I've figured out the answer to that one myself. Others can experiment, and see how they feel when they sit inside all the time versus being out in the sun. And yeah, blue blockers, likewise, the flip side of that, or just even better, because I'm not really like here to sell the product, although buy it if you'd like, because it's really, really beneficial for you. But basically, darkness at night's the best. So like, if you see me at my place at night, Like I have no lights at all except a little red headlamp that I use that I bought on Amazon, which I should be selling those because people, now people are going to go buy them, and I should sell them myself. But anyhow, they're not that profitable, I don't think. But yeah, that's enough. But the key thing is when you go out at night or you're exposed to someone else's lights that you can't control, that's when having a pair of good blue blockers is the bomb. So unless you literally like don't go out ever and you're planning on being a hermit, which is totally cool. Like, Henry David Thoreau did that for 2 years in Concord, Massachusetts at Walden Pond, and he did great. So nothing wrong with being a hermit, but yeah.
Well, hold on, Matt. Hold on. Tell me about the red headlight lamp, and when do you use that? Is that just like to navigate around your house at night, kind of as you're getting ready for bed? So I mean, listen.
Yeah, so as soon as it gets dark, sun sets, and right now in California where I am, it's like really early. It's like 4:45 or something, or 4:30. It's getting dark. It's everywhere in the northern hemisphere because we're reaching the solstice. It's getting dark at 4:30 or earlier. Well, I mean, not in the northern hemisphere, but everywhere north of like Central America. And even in Mexico, it still gets dark at like 5:36. I was just there for a month. So I turn off any lights, and then I use this red headlamp. It's like you could go on Amazon, Google red headlight, and you'll get one that has white and red. I don't think there's any that just have red capability, but just I only use the red button, the one on the left on mine, and it's great. And so that way I can.
Matt, let me ask you this: what about the EMF from the battery in that light?
I have not measured it. Actually, no. Let me take that back. I did measure the one I have, and it didn't register on my meter because it's one of those tiny little circular batteries. So I'm assuming it's not a big deal, but my assumption could be wrong because I'm like have it strapped to my head. Now, here's the thing is like typically in an ideal world, one wouldn't like have it touching their forehead because it is an EMF risk, but it's really minor. Like, I mean, if you live in a house with electricity, like the EMF of this tiny battery is like not something that would be outweighing that.
I guess we're just trying to talk about being perfectionists. Obviously, as you know, most people are sitting there right now with their cell phone glued to their skull. So I would agree with you. Probably the little red light thing is not going to be a problem.
In your hand. That's the perfectionist solution. Just hold it in your hand, or just get a handheld red flashlight. For me,
love that idea. That's a great hack.
Yeah, so that's a great. And also, like mine, it's like on like a clip where I can kind of angle it. So I can angle it so that it's not really directly on my forehead. So it's kind of like off. So, I mean, even with just a few like centimeters of space kind of makes a benefit. And that's when I'm like reading or something, I'll keep that there. But yeah, that's a pretty good hack. But again, like blue blocking glasses are beneficial because, well, first of all, stocking stuffers, they're great stocking stuffers, but on a more serious note, they're like blocking the frequencies that are emitted by these lights that have blue and green, which are disrupting melatonin. So our glasses block up to 550, which is all the blue and like 95% of the green light, while still allowing just enough where they remain widely functional. Because if we go up a little further, we could do that actually. But then if you were to drive with them, which I can't recommend, but if you were, I do personally, because I'm okay with it, my vision's good, then you wouldn't be able to see any green stoplights, or even just walking on the street. You wouldn't be able to see green stoplights, so you wouldn't know if it's your turn to cross or not. So having that like 20 nanometers of green out of 100 nanometers that green spans is well worth it for us to maintain functionality. According to Dr. Cruz, the foremost expert, the effects on melanopsin only go up to 550 nanometers. So that's also why we picked that. But
and believe me, I got no problem with you selling products on my podcast. Especially when you're selling health and wellness. I would never have someone on my podcast, that's talking about, hey, I got this new pharmaceutical for XYZ. Listen. So, and obviously, for me, it was a big paradigm shift for me. Going from the medical space to the space where I'm in right now, where you're selling the healthy lifestyle, and that's all fantastic. And I'm going to put this in the show notes. Your company with my code, so people can buy through my code your product, and I make money, you make money, and people get healthy. And when they're healthy, they get to make more money, and that's totally Ayn Rand. That's totally Jordan Peterson. That's totally American, and that's all good stuff. I love it. Love it.
I think it's amazing. So yeah, definitely put the code in the show notes, or I think you guys already made a code, but whatever it is, you can put it in the show notes just to be sure. But yeah, basically the cool thing about our glasses is like, although right now, or let's say when I started the company, my goal was simply to have attractive frames without with that look good with the blue blocking technology in them, because there really was nothing on the market that was offering both like attractive and full optimal technology. So I'm really glad that I was like, I think the first person to combine actually good looking frames and the proper technology. Like,
okay, so Matt, sorry to interrupt, but let me tell me the different, aside from aesthetics, what's different about the $10 UVEX and your product?
So honestly, I'll tell you the truth. Those are pretty good. The only thing is that ours block a little bit more light, up to 550 nanometers. However, you can go on Amazon and get a pair of glasses called DeWalt laser goggles, laser enhancement goggles, red, and you'll find them. They're like $10 and they block all the way up to 600. Don't ever buy the True Darks from Dave Asprey Biohacked Bulletproof. Nothing against Dave Asprey. I met the guy only once a long time ago, but those are like $80. And as far as ugliness and functionality, the ones on Amazon for $10 are the exact same. So it's so that would be key thing. Buy those cheap ones. So I guess,
but let's face it, aesthetics make a difference. So if you're going out for a dinner or a business meeting, or listen, a lot of people obviously operate in a world where they can't go to sleep at 6:30 at night, 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night. They got to go to some of these business meetings or lectures, or maybe they're a bartender and that's just how they make money. But the ability to wear something that's stylish, as opposed to, like you said, the DeWalt laser glasses or the UVEX glasses. Nobody wants to look like a fool, as healthy as you want to be. But no, that's fantastic. You developed it. Matt, it's kind of interesting when I meet people and they're all about, well, I'm a night owl. And I say, no, night owls. Owls are night owls. You're not a night owl. You're a human being who's supposed to be going to bed with the sun down.
Yeah, you're a fucked up diurnal animal. That's all I can say. Pardon my French. But so basically, just for people who, they look at the price point of these glasses, like, oh, that's really expensive. The thing is, they're optical quality frames and optical quality lenses, not just like cheap plastic stuff that you could buy on Amazon. Well, the ones, these DeWalt laser, those are also optical quality, but they're mass produced and they're like very, very, I'd say, low on the optical quality spectrum. Ours are made with really good quality lenses and all this. Like, those are designed for guys who are standing on the street, who are like using lasers to do leveling stuff and stuff like that, just to see specific frequencies. So again, like ours, they look good. But the biggest thing to note is that before I started Raw Optics, and then other companies followed along in offering these tints or these lens technologies, basically with the good quality frames and attractive frames too, to get a good, decent frame off the optometrist's or the optician's shelf, plus these lenses with this tint on them, basically they would have had to do a special order, and the total cost would have run somewhere between $300 and $500, potentially even more than $500 if you have a prescription. So basically, our price point at $129 is significantly less than I was paying to have blue blocking lenses specifically tinted for myself. So that's one key thing. Another key thing that's pretty cool is people will see if they go to our website, rawoptics.io. That's I made about a year ago as the beginning our startup. So we're inching closer and closer, like I said earlier in the show, towards around January 1st, launching a new site. So for people who are interested, you could go to rawoptics.com and put your email there, and you'll see we'll have a new site. It'll be very interesting, some of the stuff we're going to have on there. But if you need a pair of blue blockers, as far as functionality, the ones that we're going to be releasing then and now are going to be the same. So I wouldn't necessarily wait for that.
What about people that wear prescription glasses?
Yeah, so we do offer prescriptions, although against the will of or the suggestion of many advisors, because from a business perspective, prescription is very, very difficult. Well, let's say yeah, it's more difficult. There's more problems involved potentially, and more room for error, just because of the many fine details of prescriptions. However, we offer them because I want to be able to offer them to customers, and so even though it adds a little more complexity on our end. So basically, customers can go on, and you're going to select a frame that looks good to you, and then you're going to select the proper tint that you would like, whether it's or the lens, it's for day or for night. And then you're going to go and you're going to select prescription or non-prescription. And if it's non-prescription, it's straightforward. If it's prescription, you're going to enter the prescription at the checkout. And then you, again, use the code from Dr. Wolfson for a discount. I think it's a 10% discount they'll have. So yeah, it's pretty cool, but give it a shot. And then another benefit is if you don't like the glasses, then you can return them within 30 days of when you receive them for a full refund. And so it's like totally good. Now the biggest thing I could tell people is if, this isn't a charity because you're getting a really good product. However, if you believe in the mission that I'm doing, even if you don't really need the glasses, if you believe in the mission that I'm working on and you want to support this, like, you might go throw $100 for this or that for Christmas in some random charity. But I would say it'd be much better to invest in Raw Optics and invest in, because primarily in me, because that way I have, a bit, as this company grows, I'm going to have a bigger platform from which to share this information on a greater scale, I guess. So if someone does want these ideas to spread by supporting Raw Optics, you're doing that. And that's another reason, like you said, the other companies out there, you can support them, and that's great because these are also individuals who are benefiting from that capitalism and so on. But none of the other individuals running that company that I'm aware of, those companies that I'm aware of, are that, as far as I know, are going to have nearly as big of an impact on this as I am working towards having, just because, they're mostly in it from a business perspective, I would say, and so am I. But my end here is to really get these ideas out on a bigger scale, just because it's kind of what I'm passionate about. And I'm not going to lie, I also want to have money, like I said, financial stability. I want to be able to make my life as good as possible from a health perspective.
For sure. And I think also is that for other people, this is a great gift, for anybody, for their birthday. I mean, listen, you can buy somebody a, bottle of wine, you can buy them, gift certificates at Starbucks or whatever kind of garbage you want to do there. Why not give people the gift of health and wellness? It's like, from my book, The Paleo Cardiologist, to give people that knowledge, that information, that life-changing stuff. It's so much more valuable than a sweater at Christmas time or a bottle of wine for a birthday gift. What do I have to wear the blue blocker glasses indoors during the day?
You should. Like right now where you are with those lights behind you, I mean, it looks like you have natural light coming in the window in front of you. So that's pretty good, actually. But even then, there's a blue light hazard risk because most glasses today, like physical window glass and so on, they block a huge percentage of infrared light and red light, which means relatively you have more blue. So just believe it or not, this is another thing that Dr. Cruz hasn't talked about too much, but he demonstrated to me and explained it to me when I was at his house for Thanksgiving a couple weeks back. And basically, the risk you have going on there is not as bad maybe as purely being exposed to artificial light, but just because you're indoors with natural light from the window doesn't mean you're 100% okay. Like really being indoors isn't optimal. That's the point. That's why I'm sitting on the deck. I'm at a friend's place because I was just in Malibu the other day, and that's where I live, and that's where there's a huge wildfire recently. So like all this stuff got destroyed. And the dude who I've been like staying with, or I guess working with, I should say, lost, a tremendous amount of property and so on, which is very disappointing. But the place, like the sort of guest house cabin type of place where I've been staying, totally survived despite a big barn, another house, and all the houses across the street being burned. Mine just was like in a saved little vortex. So it's pretty, fortunate, but point is that I have a great deck here that I could sit on and just like, be out in the sun. The Pacific Ocean, literally 200 yards in the distance that way. I'm in Cardiff, California. So there's like great surf. The ocean's good. But yeah, so that's, I think, the crux of the matter of sunlight. Like we didn't really get too into the specifics, but sunlight charges your mitochondrial engines, like basically goes through our blood. And this is something Dr. Cruz, again, has been speaking about ad nauseum in recent talks, like one that I was just coordinating with him in Cancun. When we're in the sun like I am now, our blood actually comes to the surface. That's why I'm sort of pink. It happens more as there's more UV in the sun in the summer. That's why we get this pink, not necessarily because we're burnt. The burning is separate. But the pink is when the blood comes to the surface because of UV light, so that the hemoglobin cells and the water in the blood can absorb sunlight energy. And that's what water and blood cells are actually, they do. Blood cells have chromophores, which are molecules that absorb light, like red light wavelengths specifically, into our blood. And then they bring these to the mitochondria, which is where the blood cells also have to go to deliver oxygen. So the more of the light we're getting, basically, the more we're directly charging our mitochondrial function and fine-tuning all of the little details. And yeah, there's many other effects to the sun, but that's pretty simple and straightforward. And not only that, but it feels amazing. Now, people who are pale and skinny and whatever, or whatever, just pale in general, and can't get sunlight without burning, that is because you're unhealthy. So you have to fix your health, and then your skin, which is your biggest organ, will improve its health and be able to assimilate sunlight. Like what I'm saying, I'll repeat that. I used to be super pale and super skinny and very unhealthy. And I would go in the sun in Martha's Vineyard, which is like up near Cape Cod, Massachusetts, this island where I'd go for summer vacation for a week. And I would get fried to a crisp because I never got any sun the rest of the year. And then I would burn myself like crazy. And my skin was really low quality, so I couldn't absorb a lot of sun. Now I go to Mexico, which is significantly closer to the equator than Martha's Vineyard. And I could sit in the sun there for hours, like all day long. And so the point is that I'm the whitest, palest person I ever met when I was growing up. Seriously. And I'll have some pictures of that that I could even send you for the show notes or whatever, if people don't believe it, or on my Instagram, people can.
But Matt, doesn't that also bring up the importance of getting that morning sun? So our ancestors, they would walk out of their cave, their teepee, their igloo, and they would embrace the sun in the morning. I mean, so basically what I tell my patients, and I tell people, listen, our ancestors went to sleep with the sun down. They woke up before the sunrise, and then they spent the day in and out of the sun, and they were naked. So when we used to go on vacation, and I would go on vacation to, Daytona Beach coming from Chicago, we would wake up at noon, go out in the sun, for 3-4 hours and get totally fried, because you're right, we were totally unhealthy, and we never had that full spectrum of light to prep our skin to accept that UVA, UVB. That's all we got is UVA, UVB at that noontime sun, and we were fried because of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of it. I couldn't even right now tell you all the exact physics details of why that works. But if you just think about it logically, like
it's common sense. It's common sense. I agree.
Yeah, when you get in the morning sun, everything in your body, I mean, I can describe more, although it's not necessary right now, of the details of the hormonal processes that go on in the brain from morning light exposure, and these proceed throughout the whole body. So it only makes sense that when we're exposed to the sun and our cells all turn on, they're all on and ready for whatever hits them. Then when you get in the stronger sun, the mechanisms to absorb UV light are better. I can actually tell you right now, I do know why. Just came back to me based on what I've learned. When we're in infrared and red light, that builds the exclusion zone in water in our cells. So anyone who read Gerald Pollack's book, they probably, the 4 things of water, they remember, you should if you didn't. You haven't. The basically sunlight, red light, builds this part of the water called fourth phase structured water. They called it the exclusion zone because it kept out any impurities. It was pure water. So anyhow, but it's really just the structured, special liquid crystalline water. And that's created by this infrared red light that's found in the morning sun with no UV present until the sun gets a higher angle and it has to penetrate less atmosphere. And the interesting thing is when the exclusion zone was created, not when it wasn't, but once it was created and then they shine UV light on it, then the exclusion zone was able to grow to massive proportions. But so if they just shined UV on the water by itself, it didn't form the exclusion zone. But once the exclusion zone was formed, then UV light could be shined onto it and it would create a massive the exclusion zone itself, the structured water is sort of a battery, because charge in the water is separated between this negative structured zone and the protons that are kept off, which is a positive zone. So it's actually a battery that the cell can use. But however, when they would shine UV, it actually provided, so because UV has more power per photon in it, so it would create an engine essentially of water that, again, cells can use. So actually it's funny that I thought I didn't know the answer, but then it just came right back from all the stuff I've read. So you need that morning sun to get the water and the cells ready to be able to absorb the light. And then when you have the exclusion zone built, then you can go in the UV and absolutely crush it. So that's actually a pretty damn good explanation. And it's the base level of because water is the basic molecule that builds us up. So it's pretty cool. But also
Absolutely.
it has to
love it
and all this stuff. So, but again, eating, and this is something where I'm actually going to an event this weekend, and I'm slightly nervous because, well, not nervous, let's say, but one of the speakers there sells an algae DHA supplement, and I recommend that people eat seafood from my experience. He doesn't, but, you know, it's just disagreement of perspectives. It's not like a, you know, big deal. It's just ideas, trying to find the best truth. Jack's going to be there too, so it'll be really interesting. But basically, I do recommend that people eat whole seafood from my experience, even though people who sell, you know, these algae DHA supplements and in general often say that there's, you know, PCB, mercury, dioxins in fish, more in farmed fish, of course, but even in wild fish. But I say if you're concerned about that, get deep ocean fish from the north, like I think halibut, Alaskan salmon, things like this, lower on the food chain, so they haven't accumulated so many toxins. But I have to be honest with you, from all the stuff that I've learned of how well our body can function when we're exposed to sunlight, avoiding artificial light, sleeping well, drinking good water, going outside barefoot, avoiding EMF, and getting cold exposure. These are the main things that I teach people about that I'll be writing about in my book. But basically, we can handle some exposure to these toxins and so on.
Well, also, you know, let me tell you, you know, in sardines and anchovies, those small fish, there's like just about zero toxins in those. I test people's levels of heavy metals in my office, and nobody's coming back high in mercury unless they're eating tuna or swordfish. Everything else, I think is fine. But that being said, I think there's even value in eating tuna. The value of eating that, if you can't find the other fish, if all you can get is tuna, you're going to get tremendous benefits despite the mercury. And like you said, all those things that you do in the healthy lifestyle help upgrade the detox mechanisms, phase 1, phase 2, liver detoxification, building up glutathione, strong mitochondria, so you can process out those toxins out of your body. So I'm a huge fish eater, and I agree, supplementation from whether it's krill or it's algae or even fish oil, the answer is eating from the sea. I totally agree.
Totally, yeah. I would say that I think, I mean, again, this is like a claim that I don't have too much evidence for besides my intuition and my experience, but like I eat lots of tuna and lots of higher up predator fish, like poke, the Hawaiian dish of raw fish. And I feel fantastic eating it. So, you know, someone might argue, well, your mercury levels might not be so fantastic. But like, I mean, I look at myself in the mirror and I feel like I feel healthy. I look healthy from what I consider healthy. And then I look at, you know, someone who's telling me, oh, you shouldn't be eating seafood. And I look at them, they're pale. They don't look particularly healthy. Like, so I think, okay, well, maybe I would be even better if I wasn't eating, you know, fish or the high predator fish. But the fact of the matter is that I think if you're doing the majority of everything right, these small little things almost become not irrelevant, because the details do matter in many cases, but certain details like that isn't that important from what I've learned. But again, I'm not here to, you know, proselytize. So do what you wish. I'm going to do what I wish. That's the cool thing about this free capitalist society, is that we could do what we want. And the only thing that kind of makes me a little uncomfortable is like these communist liberal type people who actually want to impose their will onto other people. They want to control how other people live their lives. It's like that mindset, like Adolf Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, where if only I were the dictator of the world, I would be able to solve all the problems. And it's like, I don't know, this desire to control and change other people's behavior. that really doesn't sit well with me.
Well, well, Matt, here's what I would say with that is that I agree with you when it comes to adults. So listen, you're an adult. You can make a decision. If you want to smoke cigarettes in your own house and you want to eat McDonald's cookies and cupcakes and you want to, be nocturnal, hey, do it all day long. That's your prerogative. It's a free society to do so. But when it comes to the children, that's where I think obviously where we can really have significant arguments about the best way to raise the children, because the children don't have a voice. So that's where some kind of government authority has to come in and constitute what should be allowed with regarding children. So me personally, obviously, I think it should be illegal to smoke around a child. I think it should be illegal to feed a child fast food. I think it should be illegal to put toxic sunscreen all over your child. I think it should be illegal to let your children wear, Beats headphones that are Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, bombs going into their brain. And that's where I think obviously that some, of course, it should be Jack Wolfson's rules. My wife Heather Wolfson's rules. We're going to make up the rules what we think is best. But that's where we can let freedom can go too wild. But then you're right. Once we start limiting it from Wolfson's standpoint, well, then somebody else will come up with their rules as well, and that's certainly dangerous.
Yeah. I have to agree, but also slightly disagree in the sense that I think as far as human evolution works, trying to force anyone to do anything isn't going to make much sense because they're probably going to do it anyway. The better thing would be to actually, we've spoken about, I think, live the change, and then people can, even if many children suffer and are, put to poor health because of their parents' ignorance, lack of knowledge, eventually, rather than using government force to try to force people to do stuff, the actual truth will come out, and who will want it. I mean, because there was a time when people didn't slather their kids in sunscreen, it wasn't a thing. So it's not like it can't happen again, where that doesn't happen. And that's not ever going to happen through government regulation, I think. Never. Government regulation, I don't think, can enforce any positive policies, almost. I mean, maybe a few, but mostly not. That's my opinion.
No, I certainly agree. And I agree with your proselytizing. I agree with your ability of speaking out and getting the truth out there, because that's where the revolution's on, right? It's on Facebook, it's on WhatsApp, it's on podcasts, it's on Instagram and Snapchat, and that's where the revolution is on. That's how we get the information to the masses to make a difference. Matt, you're a Superman. You're super cool. I'm so envious that you're outside in the sun. I'm so envious, and I hate to sound, condescending, and I don't mean to in any way. Obviously, 19 years old, to know what you know. I can only wish I knew what you knew at 19. I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy to meet you, to get a chance to share your message, with the world, and for you to be so inspirational, honestly, to the other 19-year-olds out there that have ulcerative colitis, that have brain fog, that have diabetes, that have obesity. To hear from you that that you can do this, you can learn when you're young, you can make all these different changes, and it's really, really fantastic. So thank you.
Yeah, I've got to. Yeah, exactly. After this call, I'm gonna keep working. That's all I do is I work. Well, I also take time for myself, but working on this business so that I'm financially good. So again, people support this mission, and really, really beneficial for yourself and for me. But then I think the biggest thing is when I do have sort of a book or some form of this put out, I think it's going to be really big, because I think it'll catch wildfire, like the wildfire that just happened in Malibu, sort of as a little bit of a preface or foreshadowing, I should say. But that I think could be really cool, because I want these ideas like Jack Kruse, which is very limited in its reach. Not that Jack's ideas are limited because they're very big, but the reach is limited based on the extreme complexity he uses, which I understand why he does it, because it makes someone like me who's really motivated just want to keep looking and understanding more rather than having all the answers on a platter. Like if he had put all the answers on a platter 3 years ago when I first learned about his work that taught me these things and led me to the next researchers, many of whom I've actually gone and met. some of these leading mitochondrial, sunlight, origin of life researchers and so on. But if he had put it on a platter, I would have probably thought, that's too simple. I can't buy that. And it just doesn't, there's no way that's going to work. But because it was hard to get, and I had to like trudge through it to get the next piece of information, it was more enticing. So, but now I think it's time to actually, I do want to kind of put it to some extent on a platter, but not exactly, with a bit more detail than just that, so that people can apply it. If they get it, then they can apply it. So,
well, I think, you know, obviously if I had any suggestion to you, it is about, how to take the knowledge of these PhDs and the neurosurgeons, and, you know, and take all that quantum theory and quantum physics and boil it down into how do we apply that into daily life. So you can sit there and you can talk about all the damaging effects of blue light, and you could talk about how it hits the retina and goes into the, you know, and goes into the suprachiasmatic nucleus and the paraventricular nucleus, and how it goes up and down the brainstem and destroys melatonin in the pineal gland. Or you can just tell people, hey, follow nature. Go to sleep with the sun down. You awake with the sunrise. You stay out of the artificial light. You get sunshine like our ancestors did. You eat paleo foods that are organic like our ancestors did. You walk, stand barefoot like our ancestors did. If you want to go understand the science, go delve into the textbooks. You can do that all day long. But if you just want to be a healthy person, you need not understand the science. Just live with nature. It's pretty simple.
Yeah. I mean, it depends. I gotta, on one hand, sort of agree, but at the same time, I think that I think there's a lot of people like me who do want to understand, and not just have to take it at face value, because just the nature thing, especially in a world where people look at like the hippie nature types as kind of crazy, putting the explanation with the applicable practice is going to be my little niche that I capture, to bridge the gap between not too complicated textbook like deep dive, but complicated enough where the person who wants to read those chapters and paragraphs can see that. But the people who just want to know how to do it, they can also just do that. So, I think
that's pretty cool too. You know how Jack does that with some of his blog posts, where it's kind of like, here's the information, and then now if you're, you know, whatever he calls like the science geek, if you want to geek out on all this stuff, here's like your deep dive section. So I think all that is fantastic. Matt Maruca, Raw Optics, check it out. Fantastic. Matt, thanks so much for being on the Healthy Heart Show. There it is right there. So much to touch on, but man, kudos to you. Best of luck in the future. If there's anything I can do to ever help you going forward, let me know. And
appreciate it.
Look forward to seeing bigger and better things out of Matt Maruca. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. We'll get our glasses for all your patients. And for any other doctors listening to this, glasses for all your patients. That's where we can set something up. So they
love
all
it.
It.
Dr.
Awesome.
Jack Wolfson, this has been another episode of the Healthy Heart Show. We'll catch you next time.